What's good, my ghouls and goblins? Welcome back to another edition of Reely Scared. It is your live streaming weekly horror movie podcast. My name is Brundle Taylor. It's a Brundle Boy summer. And to my right here, as always, I got the top goblin, Brundle Breedlove. How you doing tonight, friend?
I'm doing great. Just got back from a little mini vacation.
Really? How was that? Little staycation? You go do anything fun?
We went to the Mohican.
Mohican!
Yeah.
I remember going there when I was a small child.
Yeah, it was a nice, relaxing little getaway for a few days, so it was fun.
Do they still have... I don't know why they would have ever... I don't know why you would ever have seen this if they still have it. When I was a kid... Here's a tangent right off the bat, really scared tangent for you. When I was a kid, I went there on a field trip, and they assigned jobs out to us in Mohican. And like little kid jobs. Like one of them was like clean the bathroom, right? And then But you know how the Mohican bathrooms are, right? Like they don't have plumbing. Like they just go down to the abyss, right?
Oh, we rented out like a little Airbnb type thing. So.
Oh, okay. So you weren't like. I guess that makes more sense than you staying in like the cabins that fifth graders field trip to.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
it goes actual running bathroom. So.
But do you know what I mean in theory?
Yes. In theory, I get it.
Cool. So like when I was a kid, we like found where all those led. It was like an open space. It was nightmarish. I just wondered if I don't know why you would have come across it on your vacation, but I just wanted to know.
Yeah, that's where I spent all 3 days was in the sewage.
It's one of those weird things where like you grow up and you remember it and you're like, did that happen? Could that have actually happened that we found that? Like a field of sewage? That's weird. I don't know. That's how I thought I would open up a show talking about the works of
David
absolutely. Cronenberg. I thought it was totally appropriate to do so. No, welcome back to Reely Scared. This is, of course, the horror movie podcast for every single week. We're joined by a special guest, and we discuss a horror film of their choice. You never know who it's going to be. You never know what we're going to watch, and we've got a great one for you tonight, one I'm very excited about. Before we dive in, of course, be sure to do all the things podcasts love for you to do. You see along the bottom, we do have our Streamlabs open. You do not need to send one in for us to read your comments in the chat, to hang out with you, to say what's up. We will bring up your comments and talk to you all the same. But if you want to support the show and support the channel, streamlabs.com/whoaretheypodcast. We appreciate anything you want to send our way. And we always love you in the chat. We'll always show you some love in the chat no matter what you do. So that's a great way to support us. Of course, like on whichever platform you are watching on. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Follow us, subscribe to us, leave a comment, all those beautiful things. Help us. They pump up the algorithm to get it nice and jacked and ready to go. Get us in your feed. And we appreciate it very much. What else can they do to help out Reely Scared? And who are they? Real Entertainment, Connor?
All right. If you're listening to us after the fact, after the live show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever, you're going to want to follow us first off. If you're not already, I don't know what you're doing. But after the fact, if you like the episode, just leave us a little fly-sized cutie. A little fly-sized cutie review about how much you love the show. And if you do, we'll share the comment on the episode.
Doesn't need to be baboon-sized. Nothing extravagant.
Not baboon-sized.
Nothing obvious, just a little insect on the inside of your telepod door, just to tell us that you appreciate us. And it goes a long way, and we appreciate y'all, the singles and goblins. We've got a great show for you tonight, one I'm really excited for. We've got somebody who I've wanted to get on here for quite some time. So I say we waste no more.
Waste no time.
The man needs no introduction, but I'm going to try to give him one anyway. He is the leader of the Outlaw Nation. He is, and I will take no slander, he is the GOAT of the movie trivia schmodown. He is the Finstock Exchange's own John Rocha.
Yo! What's up, everybody? Thanks for having me on. I'm so excited to be hanging out with you guys to talk about one of my favorite effing films ever, and one of my favorite horror movies, and one of my favorite Jeff Goldblum performances. So thanks for having me on, and thank you for the very kind words, and let's have some fun. And shout out to everybody watching or listening as well.
The pleasure is all ours. This is going to be a good one. We are just talking about David Cronenberg's The Fly, and I think I've found myself saying this more commonly week to week, and I guess it's a true mark of like you just never know when you tell somebody to pick a scary movie what they're going to pick. I never know what to expect, but I don't know if I would have expected you to go with something as upsetting as The Fly. Rocha, I would love to know when prompted, what made you think The Fly was the one you wanted to do?
Well, I mean, you sent out a list or you sent out a list of movies that have been taken.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking to myself, well, what's a horror movie I haven't spoken about in a long time? And what's one that kind of really, I still quote to this day, that stays very powerfully in my mind. And I was thinking, The Fly. Why not? I love 1980s movies. And especially, there was just something about this movie that always stayed with me. It's the rare movie that I remember its release date. And I just there's so much about the movie that just worked for me on so many levels. And it was so tragic. It's such a great, tragic horror movie. Yeah. And then, I think a little bit later, back when they started showing older movies on television, I saw the original with Vincent Price, which is just as jarring to watch of a movie when he's going, help me, and as I hit it with a rock, like that kind of that. It's such a great tale of tragedy, because this is a guy with all this intelligence and all this ability and has created something to change the world, and something like petty jealousy, a moment of drunken petty jealousy, completely alters the course of his life, and what he wanted to do versus what ended up happening for him. So it's just always been one of those that stayed with me, the tragedy of choices.
Yeah. Was this one that you had seen in the theater back when it first came out?
Oh, absolutely. Because I was a huge Goldblum fan off of Silverado, and then watching him on a couple of the things. So I was so excited. Gina Davis I'd seen in Tootsie. So I was like, oh yes, let's see what this film is all about. And something about the trailer, I was like, oh, I gotta see this. So I remember going to see it. I don't remember if I went with friends from high school, if I went by myself on a Saturday afternoon, but I knew I had to go see it. And I was changed from that moment forward. And I bought it on VHS when it came out and just would watch it religiously over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I was such a pesky kid. I would regurgitate all my food during dinner to mess with my mom sometimes. That's how terrible I was as a kid.
This is one I would love to watch in a room with a bunch of people who had never seen it before.
Oh,
yeah. That first reaction, it is so visceral. And even having seen it a couple of times and revisiting it this time, it's even knowing what to expect, it just knocks you on your ass. And like you said, there's a lot more depth to it than maybe somebody would initially want to give it credit for. Like you said, the remake of the Price movie, I don't know, a guy turns into a fly. What's that all about? Right. And especially being so violent and gross and scary, I think a lot of people will go, that's just not for me. But there is this is the first Cronenberg movie we've ever covered on here, which is
wow.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. Surprisingly, yeah.
Long time.
But yeah, a lot of people are turned off by body horror, but I think that is one of the most fascinating and possibly one of my favorite subgenres of horror, because there is a lot of depth in body horror, because it does kind of go into that, like you were saying, John, kind of that dichotomy of what someone is versus what they want.
Yeah.
And it really dives into that. And Cronenberg really found the heart, if you want to call it that, of body horror. He found the depth in body horror and horror in general. I think he's one of the masters of that. So body horror is always one of my favorites. So
yeah, when it's done right, it can be really powerful, for lack of a better word. I mean, because what's the one thing we all rely on? It's our bodies to take us places. It's our bodies to give us our strength, to help us do the things that we need to do in life. And when your body starts to break down or starts to get slower, or you see it aging, it's a constant reminder that you are getting closer to death. I mean, the second you're born, you're just marching to your death. You're not marching back to your birth. Yeah. So this idea of your body letting you down, or your body being altered in some way, is something that people really fear. Breaking a bone, getting into a car accident, becoming paralyzed, getting dementia, losing a hand or a limb. These are things that people genuinely fear in life when they go and do anything in their worlds. And when you hear about it, it's heartbreaking. And even we've been dealing with, we've been kind of monitoring Kevin Smetz's journey through cancer. Cancer is another form of the body changing you from the inside out and fighting you at times to end your life. You know, I lost my father to cancer. It's a horrible thing to watch as it ravages your body. So it's the one thing, the one place, more than our homes or apartments or whatever, but it's the one place that we think we can change and control and hope we can keep it going until we have to leave the earth. So it works so well. And
I think that's kind of the starting point for this film for Cronenberg. And again, you know, it's a remake, you know, it's adapting from what had been done earlier back in, I think, the 50s.
Yep.
But finding that layer to it where it isn't just, you know, a little sci-fi pulp film, finding that extra inspiration and heart for the movie to use it as a way to explore mortality and the different ways one can walk to their own demise, and how scary, you know, that it isn't instant at all times, that, you know, even just watching someone grow old and how they deteriorate and decay, and how scary that be, especially in the inevitability of it. I think, and I don't think this is hyperbole, I think of all of Cronenberg's movies, I would still nail this down as like, this is the masterpiece, right? Like, this is the one that really, you know, I think stands the test of time, and is also in a weird way more palatable, because I think in his other things he gets even more niche and experimental and less mainstream. This one, he's got genuine movie stars and this great horror movie surrounding all the weird, you know, examinations of self and body, but having that extra layer, and then also the fun bit of like, well, I'm going to turn a guy into a fly, and you're going to get to see what that's going to look like. I think having that sort of psychological, emotional core to it is also what makes it so much more disturbing, especially when you go on that journey with those characters. Because that's the difference. It's been a lot. I wanted to watch the Price version again before this, and I couldn't get around to it. But that one, I think, if I remember rightly, it's like he comes out that pod and he's instant fly head.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got the head on and everything. He's like, wait, what? So yeah.
I think one of the master strokes of this movie is going, no. He's going to come out. He's still going to be a person. Right. We're going to very gradually get to the end point where he's full blown. He's not Brundle Fly. He is just Fly. We're going to take our good sweet time to get there, and that's where the real horror is going to come out. You know?
Yeah. Because the movie shouldn't work. It's 90 minutes. For a horror film, that's standard horror, you know, action films, about 90 minutes from the time in the 80s. But like, they meet so quickly, him and Gina Davis, and they actually, I think they got together after this film. They started their relationship. This is where they met, I think, in real life. So the chemistry is off the charts off the bat. This is Gina Davis at her sexiest. So like kind of innocent sexuality to her. And Jeff Goldblum with those eyes. This is before Jeff becomes that guy. Yeah. This is more of the genesis of Jeff Goldblum as he's young and figuring out who he is as an actor. But there's a power in their chemistry that allows you to go on this journey. You actually don't question that she feels strongly for him so quickly, that she gravitates and connects to him. And it doesn't hurt that she's got an asshole ex-boyfriend who's her boss in this. It kind of almost kind of pushing her towards Brundle, but they have a genuine connection. And then when he goes through that thing is where the tragedy begins, because he actually just does care about her, but he gets jealous. And in that jealousy, he goes too quickly into something he shouldn't be doing. He's messing with science in an altered state, which is not what you should be doing. And he's a good guy, but then after he does that, you initially connect to him because you're like, oh wow, he's got all this energy, this is great. Yeah. And then when he flips out on her, like, you're just jealous, you know, he does all those things. You're like, shit. This is the tragedy that begins to happen here. The death of, in essence, the death of their love, but it's almost like a Romeo and Juliet kind of situation, to be honest with you, because it's a kind of innocent connection that they have. But it's ruined by this one moment of I don't know, just terrible decision by Brenda.
Yeah, and the romantic relationship level is something I definitely want to get into, because I think it also adds a brilliant layer to the film. Yeah, got a couple friends showing up in the chat. First of all, favorite ghoul. Happy Thursdays, Ghouls and Goblins. Sending all the love. Thank you very much. We love you as well. Thank you for watching. We got the King Khan. He watched us for the first time last night. The armrest. God, the armrest.
Yeah.
The screams in this film are fantastic by all the actors. Yeah. Literally the blood curdling screams are great. Yeah.
that scene, and we'll jump all around. That's how it happens on this show. We'll
Yes.
jump from wall to wall to ceiling in this show. But that is what makes that scene so intense for me. Is just how horrified that man is. You can hear it in his screams. He's like, I'm losing my mind. How could this have happened? Like, he broke my arm, and I got a compound fracture. Like, how could this have happened? And he left with my girlfriend. Like, his entire world falls apart.
Yeah, his whole entire world just shatters before his eyes. He has a broken arm and he's girlfriendless and left with this nerdy scientist. And I love that scene. I'm no stranger to like kind of off-putting gore and like violence. It's usually what I gravitate to. I promise I'm not a freak or anything like that. It's what I gravitate to a little bit, but it's what I gravitate to. So that scene was great. I love the arm breaking scene.
It's funny. I don't know. You know how you like make up weird memories that you just think are true for a long time? For like years, I falsely remembered that arm wrestling scene. Is it Over the Top, the one where Stallone turns his head around? I always, for some reason, remembered it as like that happening in Over the Top, and I was like, oh, that was weird.
I broke your arm.
That was weird that he ripped a man's arm off in that. No, I was wrong. It was in a fly this whole time. I like combined the two movies in my head. Jessica loves Gina Davis and Jeff and Earth Girls Are Easy.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Great pull.
Yeah.
Great pull. Bruce, the original was cool, but the remake was indeed horrifying in the best possible way. Gina Davis and Jeff Goldblum are the best.
Yeah, that connection is fantastic. It's a movie you can go back to, even though it's so horrifying and like off-putting, and it's that body horror, and a lot of people don't like to revisit body horror, but that connection is so great.
Yeah,
Gina Davis and Jeff Goldblum were just electric. That chemistry is just brilliant, and it's the reason I revisit this movie often. Since reviewing it on Digesting Cinema, I've revisited it so many times because it's so good. I forgot how good it was until that was brought up. So yeah, they're just fantastic in this movie.
And we said it there, and I'll say it again here. It's a surprisingly horny movie.
It is a very horny movie.
It's a hot movie, no lie. Yeah.
The first half is just sort of this strange, like quirky, like erotic thriller almost, and it is that weird magnetic energy they have too, because it almost feels naive the way, like it feels very Hollywood the way they kind of first embrace for the first time, where it's like, really? She's going for him, like. He's so manic and all over the place, and he wears the same clothes every day. He lives in this junky warehouse, but it's this weird, tangible energy that you buy into it.
And it's opening scene. The chemistry is off the charts. The opening scene is them together, and you buy it.
Yeah,
you absolutely buy their chemistry. Even her trying to like put him off, like, I have multiple interviews right now,
right?
And they're all saying the same thing you're doing. And then you buy what he's saying to her and her believing it. You buy it, absolutely. It's just the power of that casting.
He's so sure.
Yeah.
He's so sure that it wins her over. He's so sure that she comes back to his place. You know? And we did that in the 80s, ladies and gentlemen. And we did that in the 80s. We went back to people's places. It wasn't crazy inducing or horror inducing like it is now, but it was what we did back then. We rolled over. And then you had those but when they get back to the place, I mean, and this is what's fascinating. I want to make sure that we understand the context, right? Because I was a teen when this thing came out, and this is a nerd's fantasy, right? You get this gettable, beautiful, talented or journalist to come and see what you're doing, but you've got this kind of uber confidence. You even dress the way you dress because Einstein influenced you in picking your clothes a certain way. Like, you've got all this, and then you are taking her from this like uber toxic male who's like stalking her, using the key to shower in her place and won't let her go. And all these things that you have there, and even the bar scene is a microcosm of that. The nerdy guy who comes in with no shirt on, sees the kind of trashy bar girl that's there, hits on her a little bit, and then basically takes out the bully, the large bully dude with wearing the trucker shirt. And like just kind of snaps his arm and takes his girl, right? It's that kind of thing. These are real. Back in the 80s, nerds weren't as revered as they are now. Back in the 80s, they were ridiculed and beat up and bullied. I know, I still have the scars. And when you saw this film, you sensed a certain connection with, like, you lived vicariously through Goldblum, in a way. He was like a nerd fantasy because he still looked like a nerd, acted like a nerd, but his body was in such great shape that it was believable that he could get someone like Gina Davis. So it had that element to it.
Right. Just through his own charisma and his own belief and self-reliance. Like he could sell you on him being, worth your time and your investment. We got the Moose in the chat. Good looking group here.
Moose.
Right back at you, Moose. Can't wait to get Moose Haas on the show one day. That's my man right there. We should talk some more about Goldblum because I think who else could have ever played this character? No one.
Yeah.
This is like they were looking for a Goldblum type when the Goldblum type wouldn't have been tangible at the time. Like, I had read that there was I think Cronenberg had been lobbying for Goldblum from the start for this, if I remember correctly, and somebody that they were coming back with was Mel Gibson.
Oh God!
Can you imagine? I'm sure there's a version of that movie, but it's completely different than this.
Yes.
I mean,
in some variant timeline, there is a version of the Fly that is not as revered as the Jeff Goldblum Fly. There is the Mel Gibson Fly that is not as revered.
I don't think it would be Gina Davis either opposite Mel Gibson in that movie. No. It's a completely different movie at that point.
Because it's a whole different energy. You broke it down brilliantly already. You don't believe in Mel Gibson as an underdog. You can.
Right.
You're not feeling bad for that guy. He comes in and he's the action hero alpha male, and you could probably buy him as a scary guy later in the film based on how we know Mel Gibson these days. But but with Goldblum, to be able to put your guard down, and this, like you had said, he's not quite the huge star of the '90s yet, but this feels like the first real hint at what that's going to be. And I feel like as you see him here, this is how we really know him for the rest of his career. It's like you really get to see him as he truly is, which is that it's like his brain's too fast for his body to keep up, and he's always he's he's so passionate and expressive everywhere he goes, and I feel like that's so perfect for this because he's quite literally too smart for his own good in this entire film. He can't see his own downfall, and he is he gets kind of shitty and jealous. Those are the negative feelings that lead him to his own demise, which is something I didn't really appreciate at first. And I'm trying, because like Connor said, we went on our buddy's show, Digesting Cinema, and we talked about this film a little bit too. So I'm trying not to ape from their theories too much, but it's true. You do get the sense that he hasn't had many experiences like this. That a beautiful woman's giving him the time of day, very remarkable to him. And then in the same way, the duality of that is like gets jealous very easily. He feels very insecure. He can't believe somebody would be giving him the time of the day. Oh, she's a journalist. It's ulterior. And so you see how quickly he goes from being on and passionate to, oh gosh, she's going to leave me. It's all falling apart. She doesn't care about me.
Right.
Those little nuances, I think, are such great creative little touches into making that character feel realistic and dimensional, which he needs to, because he's going to turn into a big giant prosthetic monster halfway through the movie. You want that characterization so that you can then project it onto that monster and still see the character in it. And I think that's one of the brilliant parts is you still see him. You see him through the whole movie, no matter what state he's in, and he goes through quite a few.
Yeah. But isn't that what we're seeing now? People like being let out of the house for the first time in 18 months. They're acting the fool because they're like, and the same thing with him. He's like he said, I haven't had many contact with people outside. I've been just working on this the whole time. So you imagine his entire life is just kind of working on that thing every single day. And so he happens to go, and I'd love to have seen like the first 30 minutes of the movie that are missing, right? Where he gets the invite, where he's got these connections with the organization that's funding him. One of the guys reaches out to him, gives him a call, and he's like, you got to come to this thing. He's like, I don't want to come to this thing. I'm still working on this. I'm so close to getting it right. He's like, no, you got to come. If you don't come, we're going to take your funding away. Plus, there'll be people there. Maybe you can do a little pitching, whatever. And so he's there. And then so he drinks a lot there to kind of calm his nerves. A lot of socially anxious people do that to kind of handle rooms or handle these schmoozing events. So we could have played into, I mean, if it was remade now, I think there's an extra 30 minutes talking about his social anxiety, talking about how he deals with this. So we empathize even more with Seth Brendel before Gina Davis's character comes in, you know? So that's what I think is, we have to bake that in, but Goldblum gives you all that backstory in his acting and in his exchanges with Gina Davis's character. And that really builds the power of that relationship. So that when he has that moment, that tragic moment of going in there drunk, you believe it and you feel for him. And it's heartbreaking, you know, because he wasn't going out of there out of hubris. You know, he wasn't going, I'm going to prove to the world, fuck you guys. He's going in there because like, I'm just going to do this because, you know, I'm jealous and I'm mad and I got to do something to show my strength, reclaim my power because I feel like she's cuckolding me with her ex boyfriend. And so I'm going to go into this thing full on naked and come out of it and blah, blah, blah. So,
yeah, that's a great point. And when she returns, she'll realize, oh, she was a fool to ever look any other way because I'm on the precipice of changing our entire world.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah.
And for a moment, it looks like he is successful in that goal. She does see him as brilliant once again. John Bishop in the chat, Cronenberg's movies, hubris takes a psychological and physiological toll. Can't help but think of the psychoplasmics of The Brood, TV and Videodrome, and the truly auteur Crash. That's a great point.
Yeah, Crash is fantastic. We said it multiple times. Me and Taylor have this like weird shared, grew up on like different parts of Ohio. Have this weird shared connection of like watching IFC.
Yeah.
Movies we shouldn't have at a very young age. Crash was one of those. Showed the uncut version on IFC a lot.
Yeah.
And I would catch it and I was like, wow, this movie is insane. And that's one of those movies that we have like a shared connection with. Yeah, Crash is fantastic.
Talk about a horny movie, man. I mean,
that movie is,
you know what I'm
very
saying?
horny.
Yeah. And but you know, I was looking through Cronenberg's resume as you guys were talking. I'm like, man, I've seen a lot of this guy's resume without knowing that I've seen a lot of his movies. You know, like I saw Dead Ringers. I remember seeing that in the theater. So I want to see what that was all about. I saw Crash in the theater because that was like that indie movement in the 90s. You had to go see these movies to have
History of Violence.
Like you knew, History of Violence as well, which I had to come around on. So that was I wasn't 100% on board with that one, but eventually I did come around on it. But you know, he has these like Naked Lunch. Have you ever seen Naked Lunch? Do an edible and watch Naked Lunch and talking about the movie afterwards. It's such a weird little film, man, for sure.
Yeah.
And The Dead Zone, which I think is his most mainstream film, ironically, before he goes and does all these other films. But The Dead Zone is really, Walken is great in that movie.
Right. I see it coming through in the chat. Just to clarify, we don't mean Best Picture winner Crash. We mean David Cronenberg's Crash.
Come on, Jason. You're better than that.
Amputee, horny movie, Cronenberg.
Bruce was coming through. If you could do a remake, would a gender flip make it even more terrifying?
I think that would be fantastic, and that's something I would like to see. And I think it's inevitable at this point with all these kind of remakes and reboots. Kind of, I think a gender flip would be the next step in The Fly.
Yeah,
I mean, The Fly 1986 is obviously a remake of the Price one. I don't think they're shy in remaking movies like this. I think a gender flip would be the next step, and it would be something I would want to see. I would like to see a gender swap Fly.
Yeah. Well, and Cronenberg very smartly, you know, he makes Gina Davis's character more than just, you know, the romantic interest. Like,
right.
Yeah.
You know, he does explore the same kind of ideas and themes through a female lens and through a maternal lens, the layer of her being pregnant with Brendel's child. I mean, that leads to some of the most disturbing, contemplative, surreal horror of the entire film.
That worm, that larva, whatever she births. My God.
So bad. And I didn't realize this today, but David Cronenberg makes a nice little cameo in that scene as the gynecologist who delivers the maggot baby. Well, if he was never going to have a role in his own film, of course, Dr. Delivering the maggot baby.
Under a less experienced filmmaker and a less, you know, prolific filmmaker, Gina Davis's character would be that typical damsel in distress that is throwing herself at a man and wouldn't be as believable. But she's independent. She's doing things for herself. She's like, I need to do this for my story and my career.
Yeah.
And she's doing things for herself. And I think that makes her a powerful character in this. And I think that's credit to Cronenberg and his direction.
Yeah, I mean, people have this belief that women didn't become empowered until the 2000s.
Exactly.
No, women have been. I mean, Betty Davis was no wallflower, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
So we've had strong women, and we've had some male directors who understand the importance of having strong women in their movies throughout, and really horror films for all the occasion. And you do have the TNA stuff with women bikinis, and a majority of the time, the horror films have women as the protagonists who are fighting against these elements.
The final girl. I mean,
exactly.
It's a huge staple in horror cinema. The final girl, powerful female character. But oftentimes in horror, it's the damsel in distress. In action movies, the damsel in distress. Like, it can be done so wrong. But when you have that powerful final girl in a horror movie, they're done so well. That's why, the Gina Davises and the Jamie Lee Curtises are so revered, is because they're done correctly and, powerfully.
Yeah. She's a journalist.
Yeah.
She commands her space.
Yeah.
We have that moment in the clothes shop when she's getting the leather jacket for him, and Homie's been there all night overnight, which is really creepy. And it's played for creepy in the movie, by the way. Which I think is smart. And then in the men's shop, when he turns around, he's like, I knew what you were doing, blah, blah, blah. And he throws the jacket at her, which is really something. Wow. And then she turns around and she says to him, she says, I don't have to tell you where I'm going, and I go wherever I want at night. And that's her pushing back and fighting and trying, like being like, screw you. And I'm going to buy this jacket and this tie too. So kiss my ass, and you love that strength that she's showing. And eventually she brings him to heel because, eventually he kind of sits back and has to kind of follow her lead in all the situations there. So,
she becomes really the main character in the back half of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
She's really in the driver's seat because obviously with Brundle, he becomes so imperceptible. You can no longer rely. Talk about an unreliable narrator. He's not even human anymore. So it's like you can't really assign a conventional narrative or character motivation to him anymore. He's just kind of there in his mess, deteriorating and working on something. But you can no longer really project on him. But you can see the character, but it's hard for you to empathize or relate anymore. Because he's become so monstrous in others. So you have to see it through her perspective, and by getting her worldview and by seeing it through her eyes, you can still find the real tragedy in it, and it's not just a creature feature or a gross out movie anymore.
Right.
Her connection to him, being the real last person to ever have known him as a compassionate person, and seeing his brilliance and his potential and his desire to actually do good in the world and change it for the better, and seeing how that's been perverted and destroyed and what it's done to him. I think that's so important, and it really stands up why she's such a great character, and really one of three, because the other one, it's her creepy ex-boyfriend. He's got a weird name, Stathis, I think, is Stathis, something like Stathis. Something weird like that. But I think his character is kind of interesting too, because first half he is that, he's that hang around ex-boyfriend, right? I feel like everybody's had that at some point in their lives. There's that ex-boyfriend, that ex-girlfriend. It's like, can't get rid of this person. They're just on the perimeter of the picture at all times, and it's always that point of contention. And they did a good job of setting him up as the scumbag, but then also what I give it credit for is characters like that are always kind of on the rails for a big horror movie death. It's like, here's this guy, he's morally bankrupt, you don't care about him, you don't feel bad for him, so it's very easy to sacrifice him to whatever it is later. So giving him this kind of heroic turn towards the end, only to shut him down once more and get his limbs melted off. I think it's a smart move, everybody in this has a couple different shades. Nobody is a one-off. Everybody's got nuance and complication to them,
Right. Even the minor supporting characters have a good arc. Mm-hmm. They're not just throwaway characters. Even Stantis, this piece of shit we meet at the beginning, has an arc that is believable. Yeah. Everybody has an arc that is believable, and I think that's a reason why this movie I've revisited 4 times this month. Like it's a powerful movie, and there's great character building. It's a great horror movie. I just think it's fantastically done.
Yeah.
That's you got to have complex characters so that people will come back over and over again, as you just said, to enjoy it. Because you're right. Stathis at the beginning, he's a dick. He's stalking her. He's got all these tactics to try to win her back.
Yeah.
But I think once he realizes she's not coming back, he goes the friend route. Well, I don't want to lose her fully. So let me just be there as a friend. And in the end, it ends up being useful because he's there for her when she finds out she's pregnant. He's there for her when she's like, trying to figure out what to do next. And he's the one that takes her to the hospital to possibly have the abortion. So he comes in handy in that way. And you don't see him trying to do this so he can get with her. Like he's just doing this because like she actually does care about her in some fucked up way. So he's doing these things to kind of like be there for her. In this crazy unusual situation,
Speaking of the abortion, I feel like in this movie there's a lot of stuff that, because I had to think back that this is
1986.
Like not only is there an empowered woman character, which was not very popular in the 80s in film, but there's also like a huge like subplot with this abortion. Wow, like Cronenberg really did a lot of progressive stuff in this film that was not popular in this. It's still not popular.
Yeah,
sure.
It's still not popular, and he's doing all this in 86.
From what I understand, at the time when it was released, a lot of people drew like a line between this and like the AIDS crisis and thought maybe this was in some sense about that, some sort of horror movie rendition of that. And I guess that kind of surprised Cronenberg. Like it wasn't initially his intent, like we had said, he was thinking of getting older and cancer and death and deterioration. But, a lot of those things can go hands in hands again with AIDS and, that being very much a concern in mainstream society and in the gay community at the time. And, it's interesting what you can project on something again about a movie or a guy turns into a fly. I think it's very easy to dismiss movies like this. Horror as a genre, I think, is so crafty in examining, what is it? It's movies about things that scare us and getting to examine ideas and topics that don't get talked about very much in the daylight, because maybe they aren't as socially acceptable, or because they just are so taboo or concerning. It's hard to do so. Whereas somebody like Cronenberg, right? That's the world he thrives and lives in. And I think, his works, especially this, are so tailor-made to examine, what upsets us the most and find a way to make it entertaining. Yeah. But also by the time it's over, you went on that journey and you're like, wow, you're always going to remember how you felt seeing those things for the first time. It was going to disturb you on several levels. The obvious, the physical violence and gross outness of it, but also just the psychological connections you can make and the weird relatability and something like that.
Horror is easy to kind of dismiss. I mean, just because of the label of the genre. I mean, with Hereditary, it's about grief. Conjuring, about a mother's love. There's so many horror movies that are done right and have a deeper kind of meaning to it, but people just dismiss it because it's horror. They don't like horror. But when you find a good horror movie, there's a deeper meaning to it, and there's a lot to love about it. And I think this is one of those. It falls into the same category about a horror movie that just has a lot more to say than just being a gross out body horror film.
Yeah. I mean, that's the key to it. When I first started working at Collider, Perry and I had a couple of fun exchanges on Movie Talk where it seemed like I was saying the horror genre isn't as popular, isn't as good, and blah, blah, blah. And what I was taught, and so she kind of put that label on me. And the truth is, I like horror. I love horror that's done when it's done well. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. I'm not going to go see Friday 13th Part 25. I'm just not going to go see that. But something like this, I'm going to see. Hereditary, I'm going to see. The Lighthouse, I'm going to see, because it's speaking about something deeper, something strong. And the idea of AIDS, I'd never once put that together until you just said something now, because to me, I was looking more at the like you said, the cancer, getting older, losing all that. But also you look at this, also the relationship in here. Remember, when his ear falls off and he's just finished regurgitating all over his shirt, she hugs him.
Right.
She hugs him right after that moment. And this is what I think is great about how Cronenberg does body horror in this movie. It isn't done for shock value that isn't organic in the story. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It all connects and it makes sense when it shows up, as opposed to like those 80s 3D films that are like, here's the gun, here's the arrow. Like, they're not trying to do that. They're just trying to show, or Cronenberg's trying to show what is happening in the stages as it goes along. And yes, it's kind of gross to watch, but you're also seeing him experiencing these pieces of himself falling off, these actual reactions, and what that might be. And him saving it in the cabinet is really fascinating, because at the end, he's still a scientist. So for him, he's saving this stuff to study or to speculate about, or to explore. And that makes a lot of sense, as opposed to being something like, oh, throw up. You know, it's more like, oh, what is happening here? Why is he doing this? And I appreciate that, you know?
Yeah, it is interesting. It kind of sticks out to me every time, is there's no real like repulsion on Gina Davis's part. No. Anybody else is, as soon as they start cutting those weird hairs out of his back, they're thinking, I'm going to start taking a step back emotionally from this, because I just don't know if it's going to work out. Right. That scene, where his ear falls off and he's covered in slime and viscera, which I understand that her reaction, the take in the film is genuine. That it's one of those things where they didn't tell her his ear was going to fall off in the middle of the take, so she's they just left it in. They're like, that's it. That's how you would act. So we're going to leave it in. But yeah, she embraces him, and there's no hesitance in it. She doesn't take a step back. She's never scared of him until there's nothing left of him. But even then, she almost can't bring herself to take him out of his misery until he's begging for it, and she realizes there's no other way. She's all till the end, she is trying to find a solution. She's saying we should go see a doctor or an expert, somebody could help you, and he's too brilliant to believe that's possible. He knows there's nobody on this planet who could possibly help him. He was the only one who could get to this conclusion. There's nobody that can pull him out, because he can't do it. And you're right, he's just kind of studying himself at this point. He knows, well, there's no path backwards. There's no undoing getting the fly out. I'm going to go there. So let's just let's be a scientist and see what happens along the way, and see what kind of conclusion we come to. And that's tragic too, because he's still in there the whole time.
Yeah. And how many of us are afraid to show the uglier sides of ourselves to our partners? And so, yes, physically this is all happening to him, but how many of us inside can feel that way about ourselves and are afraid to show that to our partners? Absolutely. And we hope we find that one partner that we can, kind of tell our truths to, tell our deepest fears, our scariest moments, share our most panic-inducing moments, and have them hug us or take care of us or hold our hand or be there. That's one of the strongest foundations of my relationship with my lady Outlaw, is because we've both been there for each other through panic attacks at the beginning of our relationship. Like we understood each other's moments, and we knew how to speak to each other because we've been through that separately, so there's a power in that relationship. But
I think that what makes it more believable is, that it's a real kind of look at a strong relationship. Because like you said, like being there for each other with my fiance, it's the same thing. Been there for each other through panic attacks and like feeling off, dealing with bipolar myself, her, kind of monitoring like how my like kind of like just signs that I might be going through something. Like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Same thing with me to her with her anxiety. Like it's very believable that this is a strong relationship, and she wants to be there for Brundle. And hugging him when his ear falls off. It's the same thing. It's even though it's very gross, it's the same thing. It's you can believe that love that she has for him, even though he's very grotesque in this instance.
Yeah, so having somebody who can find the best in you and those redeemable factors in you in your lowest moments, not running out the door at the first sign of trouble, but knowing what that there's reason to stay there. It is very powerful, and I think it's completely intentional, because you get so caught up in the gross out factor of it that it kind of it wakes you up when that's not how she responds. She doesn't scream and run outside like 99 out of 100 people would at the sight of that. And you as an audience member want to do that repeatedly. And I also think, just as disturbing as his nails falling out and his teeth falling out, seeing how he changes psychologically, not just in the way that he treats her, where he's more prone to these outbursts and his personality changes, he's more aggressive and he, the things that you already know are there, the potential jealousy and the insecurities, those get turned up by 10. But then also seeing how he no longer thinks of himself as one person. We're joking about it, but when he does only think of himself in terms of Brundlefly, he doesn't even think of himself as a man anymore. He has to come up with a completely new identity because he can't even compartmentalize anymore. And seeing that psychological decline is very disturbing too, which again harkens back to the aging aspect of it. Seeing somebody struggle with something like dementia or Alzheimer's or any kind of mental illness where they change psychologically or emotionally, it's a very hard decline or transformation to watch. And like dialing that in, in the literal way, a surface level way of, he's got big fly eyes and he can climb up the wall. That's the fun part. But then also what hides underneath, how it changes him mentally, I think is really some of the more upsetting stuff. And especially for her character too, since you're on that journey with her and seeing how she is having to observe that. John Bishop coming through with a lot of great stuff in the chat here. Wade Goldblum breaks down, please help me in that moment. Yeah, it's quite sad. Like you really, it's a mark of how great this film is and how great Cronenberg is that you buy that moment and that you aren't taking out.
That's no knock to Jeff Goldblum either, because you're sympathizing with this thing that when this time you'd be like, oh, kill it, kill this thing. Like you want him to overcome this, right? Because you believe that foundation of that relationship. So it's very powerful on his end as well.
Yeah. We had Jesse Swift earlier. What's up going on, Jesse? What would Dr. Ian Malcolm think of the lack of scientific responsibility shown in these films? I know we put it together that he does, very famously play another scientist a few years later.
Life finds a way. So.
Yes, it certainly does, for better or for worse.
And this is interesting. Another interesting fact was that Gene Siskel put this on his 10 best list of 86, and he wasn't a huge fan of horror, so that's very interesting. Yeah, that something so powerful, someone who's famously not a horror fan would be raving about this film at the time.
Yeah, and it won an Oscar. It won Best Makeup at the 1987 Oscars for 1986 film. Remember, Aliens is this year as well. Yeah, so The Fly and Aliens is an incredible 1-2 horror punch, one a little more action, the other one a little more of a psychological exploration, and it's fantastic. I'm looking at the people who are nominated right now for Best Actor: Paul Newman, Color Money, Dexter Gordon for Remedy, Bob Hoskins, William Hurt, James Woods. I mean, I could replace one person there with Jeff Goldblum. I mean, I could at least one person there. I mean, Jeff Goldblum does such, and this is what happens to horror. And you guys, this is your podcast. You guys know horror does not, it's treated like a redheaded stepchild when it comes to the Oscars all the time. Yet show me these 5 guys. How do you think they would do playing this character in The Fly? And Goldblum makes you care about Seth Brundle through the makeup. As the makeup gets more and more kind of like, gross, and you get the body kind of suit that he's wearing and all of that, you still care about him because of the voice, because of the performance, because it's in his eyes, the emotions
in the way he's
going through.
Moving around when he's first turning into the fly. He's like looking around like very frantically, like a fly would be. Like it's so believable that you are following him through this transformation that you still see him in that final product, that final gross product. And you're right. Horror is treated like the ugly redheaded stepchild. I mean, Toni Collette, Oscar-worthy performance in Hereditary, and not even a nomination. It's crazy. There's a lot to love with horror, and there's a lot of award-worthy performances in horror, especially in the last decade.
Yeah.
I think it maybe comes with that, I think a lot of people aren't interested in the experiences that movies like this one will take you on. Again, some part of it's a dismissive quality, but I think it really does make some people uncomfortable. They go on those kinds of psychological journeys. And, obviously it's very gross too. So, some people don't have a stomach for that, but I think it would be a shame to kind of discount this as just some sort of gross out gore fest because don't get me wrong, it is that at times too. It's a very visually upsetting movie, but also there's just so much more under the surface there. But in regards to the special effects, I mean, they're amazing, and it's Goldblum the whole time too. It's until it's a puppet, it's him the whole time. And I love how gradual transformation is too. Like it starts off like the first time or like the second day he and Gina Davis are really intimate with each other coming out of that telepod, and at first it looks like he's having a bad breakout. He's got some acne.
He's
a little sweaty, he's a little gaunt, and just very gradually gets a little more more blemished, and until his hair's falling out and his teeth falling out. That nail scene, I think to this day.
Yeah.
I don't know the nail thing. I've seen it in other films. This is if you had to, I don't know who would qualify in this way, but if you had to put the award on it, this is number one with the bullet. The most disturbing nail trauma I've seen in a film.
My fiance always wants to trim my nails whenever they get a little too long, and I'm like, it's because this movie, seeing it at like 9 years old, being like, I don't want that. My nail's gonna fall off.
Yeah, I get a little more sensitive around the nails too for the exact reason. It's this movie, and the way stuff squeezes out, and he's so slimy throughout the movie. And of course, Moose, he's almost thrown up 3 times so far in the podcast, just remembering these scenes. The show is great. Thank you, Moose.
But it's crazy how horror can affect how you react to things in real life. Like Final Destination 2, I will not drive behind a semi carrying like logs. I will not do it. Yeah. It's crazy how like horror can affect you in real life.
Jaws. I saw Jaws when I was 9 or 10 years old on TV, and like I've never been past 4 feet in the water ever since. Maybe once or twice in my life I've waded out where I can't touch the sand. And I freaked out. And I lived in California, but I lived in LA for 20 years. And I went to the beach maybe 4 or 5 times the whole time to actually sit at the beach and go into the beach because I just have that fear, And now they've got these drones where they show the great whites, how close they're coming to the surfers. Those videos scares the living shit out of me even more. So it's like horror does that to you if you see it at a young age. I mean, Nosferatu, I saw it like 6 years old because the woman who was taking care of us when my mom and dad were out working, she fell asleep. So it was like Halloween night or whatever. Yeah. We'd gone out and gotten candy, then came back, and she fell asleep. So I snuck downstairs. She'd left the TV on, and on ABC at midnight, they were showing Nosferatu. So I saw that thing coming out of the dark at 7 years old, scream my damn head off, man. So it's horror is it's funny to me because tell me that Schindler's List isn't a horror. That's a horror. I mean, sure. I turn away from watching these people getting shot in the head just for being Jewish as quickly as I turn away from watching a larva come out of Gina Davis's body. Like it's a different kind of horror, and somehow people have elevated that kind of human real horror over this kind of horror. But the value, I think, is still, it can be arguably comparable, So
I think films like this and the work of somebody like a Cronenberg or like somebody, I think, like David Lynch, who's more surreal and psychological and imperceptible, but like dialing in and finding whatever that primal fear and insecurity is, and then putting it in a way that's not so literal and is more up to your interpretation, but still hits you on that psychological emotional level where when you're watching it, where you're like, this is engaging with me on a way that does make me uncomfortable. And some people, some people chase that feeling. And I think that's common in horror. And I can't even really quantify what that is, or why I'm wired that way, why that appeals to me, because I can certainly get why it doesn't appeal to other people. So why does it appeal to me? I almost don't even know. But giving it to you in a way where it's like, yes, it is also very entertaining, because I agree, something like Schindler's List or something depicting a very real, very literal tragedy, it's hard for me to get in a place where I want to sit down and go there, and that doesn't mean they're not great films. They're great films and they're worth watching, but it's like, it's a lot easier for me to say, okay, I'm going to watch The Fly or Video.
My Dog Skip is a horror movie.
Right. The place.
I don't think I'll ever watch My Dog Skip ever again. After seeing that at a very young age, I'll never watch that. After owning a dog, I will never watch My Dog Skip again. It's horrifying.
No, you're 100% right. I'm much easier going to be interested in watching this than something like that. And that can still take you to a lot of the same sort of meditations on your own grief and memories and fears. But like this, it's going to dress up in a way it's a little more imaginative, and maybe that makes it an easier pill to swallow. I don't know. Maybe that's why I like it, because the closer it is to reality, it's like I'm in.
The more horrifying, yeah.
I'm in reality. I'm already there. I don't need the extra push. Let me go somewhere. Let me go somewhere else where I can escape a little bit, but also feel something that's real still as well. Right. And I think this is a movie that nails that down while also having a baboon get turned inside out and makes you very squeamish.
I love the baboon. When the second one survived, I was like, yes. Second baboon lived. Yes.
I do want to watch the rest of the movie for the baboon's eyes, because he just kind of disappears about halfway through the movie. Like presumably he's still hanging out.
Where did the baboon go?
So actually, it's funny you ask, because I don't know if this is out there. I should have tried to see if I could have found it before we started. I just learned about it recently. Reading about this film, there is another scene with that baboon that did not make it to the final cut of this film. And I don't know if maybe it exists on a Blu-ray somewhere, if it's a deleted scene that's out there on the internet somehow. But there's a scene where Brundle, in his mania, decides he's going to try to recreate the experiment as a way to maybe find a cure and see what happens. So he puts the baboon in the pot again, along with a cat.
Oh no!
Fuses them together into some sort of chimera freak monster. Wow. And it goes outrageously bad right away. And I guess you can imagine the genetic complexities of a fly versus a cat. It's a lot more intense, and he has to beat it to death with a pipe immediately as soon as it emerges. Put it out of its mercy. And I guess they had done test screenings where it was left in, and everybody was like, "You have to take that out," because I guess it was really hard to identify with Brundle any longer after you see him so purposely set
a baboon cat with a pipe.
Yeah. There's some other little things that got left out. I would love to. It sounds very perverse, but I would love to see that scene if it exists. It's concerning that I would want to go find that, but I would love to see.
I'm fine not seeing it with two cats that I adore. I'm fine not seeing that.
Baboon cat.
Well, yeah, it's with that, because I've seen what it looks like when a man and a fly and a door become the same being. That's pretty damn extravagant. What does a cat monkey look like? How did they render that? And I also understand that baboon was a super pain in the ass on set.
Oh, I can imagine.
You think of monkeys on set. I get, chimps, I think are probably easier to train. What I was reading about it was oh no, baboons, you can't train them. They don't give a shit. They just show up and cause problems. And there were moments through Cronenberg's own words, he was like, thank God, because Jeff is this big, strong man, and he's lean. He's like, Jeff had to overpower the baboon multiple times. And I don't know what the implication of this was, but Cronenberg was like, had he not been able to, it could have been a very bad day for some of the women on the set, because he was trying to be an alpha male, the baboon.
Oh my God.
I don't know what he was implying through that. But Goldblum asserted his dominance over the baboon several times and saved the production.
As you would. He is an alpha male through and through.
I just watched the scene while you guys were talking. It is exactly as you described it. I put it in the private chat for you to watch later there.
Perfect.
So enjoy that. And he does beat the baboon to death with a pipe as it's squealing there.
Oh no.
Pretty unsettling. And then he goes out onto the roof, and then his legs start to come out of his body. His fly hands start to come out of his body. So it's pretty intense. Pretty intense.
Okay, I think that makes sense, because that's the other one I read about, was like the fly limbs come out.
mean, that makes sense in the evolution, because that's his evolution into beast.
Right.
You know, he's given up all humanity, and then his fly legs are growing out of him. So it makes sense. Mm-hmm. I'll definitely watch that.
Yeah, a must watch. The Brundlefly. That makes 4 times. Yeah, we should put that link in the public chat too. I'm sure everybody wants to engage with that tonight. God, yeah, this movie's great. We should talk, I guess, a little bit more about the ending of it too before we wrap up, because I think it's got such a great dramatic ending. I said this again, not to repeat myself too much, but when we did Digesting Cinema, this reminds me a lot of, like, if you really wanted to translate like the Universal monster experience to what would have then been a modern film, now it's obviously an 80s film, but I think this is such a great way to do it, where it's not such a literal, like, oh, we do a werewolf movie, oh, we do a Dracula movie. It's like bringing that experience and the tragedy of those characters, and giving them this sort of perverse humanity. I think it's so perfectly translated here, where it's like this movie holds up in the way that those classic movies do. Even if, even if the conventions of what's horror, what's scary have changed, modern audiences aren't going to probably watch, The Wolfman and feel the same way that people did in the 30s and the 40s, seeing those movies for the first time. But like, I think they translate that experience so well into what I think is a perfect like monster movie finale. It's so dramatic and so epic. Him showing up at the hospital. Oh. To snatch her, it's so scary. He's so scary at that point. He comes through the window, and it's not a movie with jump scares or anything like that in it, but like that's probably the closest moment to one, where he comes through the window, and it feels Dracula-esque, or like Phantom of the Opera-esque, the monster,
or even King Kong. Coming through the window to grab Fay Ray and take her with him up to the top of the Empire State. And it's great. You're right, Taylor, because it totally leans into a bit of an homage to the old school horror films, because even the way he carries her and she gives in and she puts her arm around his neck or whatever. She doesn't fight back. She doesn't kick and push or hit or anything. She's just kind of caught up here because she doesn't even know if she really wants to kill the baby herself. She's still doubting it even up until that moment. And once again, it's a great point you bring up, this idea of abortion. This is the 80s. I mean, people were protesting in the streets about this kind of stuff. People were bombing abortion clinics. People were sitting outside and yelling at women who were walking into abortion clinics. Yeah. So this was very much a topical issue at the time.
Something that still is.
Yeah, well, yes, of course. Yeah, but it was like really at a fever pitch back then. And so you see that situation here play itself out, and she takes him, or he takes her, and they go all the way out to the thing. And then you have homie show up with the weapon, because remember, and it's so funny. This worked out because he stalked them. He would have never been at her house or at his house if he hadn't stalked her back to Brendel's house. So it's so incredible how he's laying these seeds in this 90-minute movie. They pay off so well as you go into that ending and the tragic ending, the Shakespearean tragic ending, where he picks up the shotgun and puts it to his temple, which is like a final act to make you empathize and care for Seth Brundle, which I think is brilliant.
And Brundlefly, just begging him to do it, essentially. Right. Like it's even more heartbreaking where, Brundle was aware, I'm no longer Brundle. Yeah. I'm Brundlefly. Just put me out of my misery.
Right.
Yeah. He's truly become something other. He's imperceptible at this point. There's no redemption. There's no rescue. You just have to end it. And I love you get one last, well, you get a couple really in these last couple minutes, but you get the big gross out. Cause I remember, seeing this for the first time, where he has that little bit where he's like, I'm going to record myself eating my honey buns. I'm going to show you how I do it. Right. Oh, okay, here we go. And I remember it cuts away, you see what's his name? Stath. What is his name? Yeah. He has a weird name.
Stathis. Stathis Barnes.
Stathis. Okay. Yeah, it's got an unusual name. You see his reaction to it, but you don't get to see it. And I remember being like, "Oh man, I kind of wanted to see what happened," and but no, they're just teasing you, holding off till the big payoff when Stathis gets it firsthand. And again, it's the same thing as the arm wrestling scene.
Oh.
It's not just the visuals of like, oh, that's gross. It's like seeing him trying to process what is happening to him is so disturbing.
Him melting off, yeah.
Because
he's going into shock. He's going into shock.
Yeah, he's not screaming or he's not fighting. He freezes and just watches this dissolving stump. He's like, 5 seconds ago this was a hand. I was the hero. I was here to save the day, and now my hand is dissolved by fly spit. And seeing him just try to it's a quiet little performance. Seeing him try to get through that, and come back in a way where he could still save the day. That is what's so disturbing to me, because it's his mind breaks. He's oh my god, there's a fly person. He's spitting on me. His leg turns to goo. It's just I love it. It's such a great final gross out. Got Bigfoot in the chat. What's going on, buddy? Thanks for tuning in. Nerd Chronic, Stathis Baratheon, right? Right. That's what my brain keeps trying to say, and I know that it's not.
Yeah.
Correct.
Also, a guy who didn't get the woman he was going for. So but I love the fact that he's still and this is brilliant again, right? He's in shock. The hand is melted off. He is on the ground, and still his instinct is to defend himself like a human being. Yeah. And he reaches for the gun with his leg almost instinctively, right? I mean, because if he's in any way right thinking, you don't do that. You wait till the fly goes, you do something to kick the fly away or whatever. And he goes and gets it, and he just regurgitates on his ankle, which sends him deeper into the shock. But the fact that he's still fighting to get that gun up to shoot him kind of plays itself out a little bit later when he's the one that shoots. In the last desperate act before he fully passes out, he shoots the wires and the cords that connect to the telepods. To save Gina Davis.
Yeah. And that Gina Davis can still somehow appeal to Brundlefly.
Yeah.
In their last couple of moments, like she calls him off. He's going to issue the killing blow, the killing spit.
Yeah.
She's still able to appeal to whatever shred of humanity is left in there and get him to stop. Yeah. Of course, it's just prolonging. It's a distraction to him. His final plan, which again, the implication is so disturbing. It's such a mad scientist, we're all going to go in the pod and we're all going to become this hive mind being. Will be the perfect family, all occupying the same body, which, you almost want to see the other ending of this Cronenberg movie where that happens. Cause oh my God, that would be the thing of nightmares. And he would depict that so brilliantly, but no, you still get the big hero moment and it becomes hers,
right.
Stathis saves her, right? He severs the cables, but after that, he's down for the count. That's all he's got left in him. I would love to know what the rest of that guy's life looks like.
Yeah, right.
Something that still cracks me up is how abruptly the movie, after she shoots him, and it's almost a Star Wars-esque cut to credits where it's just and scene. Good night, everybody. You get to go home now. You don't get to unpack what that relationship is or what the next day is. It's just it's been dealt with, and you get that great Howard Shores score going. And good night, ladies and gentlemen. And I just think of an audience in the theater for the first time, just sitting there, having to unpack that while the credits roll in front of them.
I feel like this is the first movie I ever sat through the credits afterwards trying to process what I just watched. I mean, if I think I remember correctly, because I was like, what the hell? And you're right, it just ends. There's no next day. There's no denouement. There's no let me, make me feel better about it. There's none of that at the end of the movie. It just ends,
Yeah. It's definitely one of those where once in a while you get that in the theater. Maybe you see it with some people and
right.
The obvious instinct is to lean over and go so what'd you think? And it's one of those ones where it's you can't do it right away. You got to just kind of sit there and your sweat and your shock. And go, I don't know what I think. I'm going to have to get back to you on that. Cause holy shit, this was quite a crucible we went on in this movie. But
until you see part 2 with his son.
Oh boy.
I was gonna ask. I've not seen the sequel to this.
I have not seen the sequel.
Okay.
Yes. I was hoping against hope because I think the makeup guy directed the sequel.
Yeah.
And it's Eric Stoltz.
Yeah.
But it's like Son of Frankenstein. You're just it's not anywhere near as good, and it's a shame because it kind of if you let it kind of ruins the first movie. So you just kind of let that be, like Son of the Mask or whatever. You don't want to watch that movie. Just appreciate the mask.
What's crazy about the Son of Mask is
what's crazy about it?
What is crazy about Son of Mask?
At about, I was probably like 10 or 11, bought it on DVD, watched it, and I was like, Mom, this movie is terrible. And she worked at Family Video at the time. So I was like, I hate this movie. You are returning it. So she shrink wrapped it how they did at Family Video back in the day. They would like rewrap the DVD cases for the display, rewrapped it. We returned it, got our money back. But that's how bad that movie is at such a young age. I was like, I couldn't enjoy this movie. I was like, Mom, you're returning it right now.
Birth of a film snob right there.
Yeah, so, right
absolutely.
There.
That's where you set your quality bar for the first time in life. Yeah.
I that's one of the reasons. My grandpa like having like so many VHS tapes where he had to catalog them, and then my mom being a manager at Family Video, so I watched like tens of movies every day, just ended up just like birthing me having a podcast with you.
Yeah. I could see them. We talk about sequels, and the idea of this being remade again earlier was brought up. I could see it happening. I mean, this in itself, people forget in the same way.
We now would do fantastic redoing this.
Yeah, I think in the same way people forget John Carpenter's The Thing is a remake. They forget this is a remake sometimes because it did make such a cultural imprint that maybe the originals quite didn't, or at least to a modern audience. So I think it inevitably somebody else probably will come to it, and I don't think that's necessarily sacrilege, but the bar is high. They've got a tall order to fill to try to get in this world. I actually just learned that Cronenberg teased the idea of doing a direct follow-up to this in recent years. Like
I would love to see that.
Which it'd be very fascinating because he's never
even his son. I mean, Possessor was fantastic. It would be so cool to see his son doing a follow-up to his father's like masterpiece.
Yeah, he's very publicly kind of floated and revealed the idea that he has something else that he would do in this world. He's never really said exactly what it'd be. He's revealed that like it wouldn't be a literal The Fly 2 type sequel. It'd be sort of a spiritual sequel, but something that would still be looking at the technological aspect of it and looking at it through a modern technological lens. Yeah. And he has an idea, but he's not going to give too much away publicly unless it ever gets greenlit and funded and all of that. I would love to see what else he has, and of course Goldblum. And I love reading just a Goldblum quote because you just hear it in your head. It's even the words are just animated. It's just like, oh boy, I would love to do that again. Golly, he was a blast to work with. Like
Blumhouse would be smart to greenlight a Fly 2 with Cronenberg and Goldblum.
Yeah. I think this is a Fox movie, so I think doesn't technically Disney own The Fly?
Oh, Disney will never fucking do this.
I don't know.
Disney will never fucking do it.
Disney's The Fly. I'll see Brundlefly and Wreck-It Ralph 3 or something like that. Who knows? I don't know. They're playing around with xenomorphs and stuff now, so who knows?
Come on.
Yeah. I mean, there are Marvel comics about aliens, so aren't we getting an Alien TV series on Hulu?
Yeah, Noah Hawley's making a alien show.
So who knows?
You never know. At the end, at Disney, it's all about the bottom line. If they see the dollar signs in Mickey's eyes, they'll be able to justify doing Fly 2, I think. That's all.
Yeah, Disney, I know you're watching. Go ahead and greenlight a Fly 2 or a Fly Hulu series.
Yeah.
Could see that too. I was surprised to learn, and we're winding down here, but I would never expected this. This opened up number one. We don't talk about the box office much on this show. This opened up number one.
Yeah, bro.
1986. Yeah. Can you imagine a movie like this opening to number one right now? It's insane to me.
Yeah. People, and once again, you're catching Gina Davis and Jeff Goldblum at this time in their lives before they become, Gina Davis and Jeff Goldblum in the 90s. And it's a perfect.
Well, I mean, right now I can believe it. I mean, we have a battle of horror in the box office right now. And it will continue for the rest of the year, I think. Horror battling for the top spot, but in like normal times, yeah, it's hard to believe that this was number one. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a remake of a 50s film, but not based on anything, no obvious series tie-in, and like not only being a scary movie, but just being so unconventional and gross and upsetting. And it was number one for 2 straight weeks. That's that's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy. I wish we could still see results like that for movies like this, because I think it'd be to our benefit to have things this challenging getting in front of those wide audiences.
It's not a far stretch. I mean, we saw Halloween 2018 was phenomenal. The Invisible Man by Lee Winnell was fantastic.
Yeah.
It would be fantastic to see one of those two, David Gordon Green or Lee Winnell. Those are the first 2 names that come to mind to relaunch this.
Right. Yeah. I love your idea of Brandon. There's something Brandon, right? Brandon Cronenberg?
Yeah, Brandon Cronenberg. Because that would just be like a legacy, like, look at this legacy, 30 years later, seeing, his son pick up where he left off would be just phenomenal.
Yeah, I love that idea. If it wasn't Daddy Cronenberg, I love that idea. If we're going to continue the legacy, and of course, Nerd Chronic, I love this. They should have the Brundlefly in the Collector's Museum in the Marvel.
Yeah.
Only if the Grandmaster's getting a tour of the museum.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
Get Goldblum remarking at his own being in a tank there. That'd be wonderful. Damn, this has been a great movie to talk about.
Yeah.
This has been I always underestimate, like, people pick up movies and I go, awesome, I can't wait to talk about that. And then like it's not until we really get into it where I go, wow, there's so much to really dig at here. There's so much rich material to kind of examine and appreciate. And wow, this has been one of them.
It was fantastic having you, Rocha, on the show. I watched you on Movie Talk a lot. Like on my breaks at the movie theater, when I managed a movie theater, I would watch you on my breaks, just talking about anything. And I was like, I hope Rocha's on this episode. So it was just fantastic having you on this episode. So thank you for coming on to our little show, because this is a dream come true.
Yeah, please, this is a blast. Thank you for having me. But it's great to talk about films. I mean, this is something that I love to do, and it's with people who are fans just like I am of movies. To get knee deep into a film is always a joy, man. And this is one of those ones that I don't get to talk about enough, and so getting to explore with you guys was a blast. So definitely thank you very much for having me on.
Absolutely. It was our pleasure and our privilege, buddy. It was great. I can't imagine there's anybody in attendance who doesn't know, but it is, of course, customary to ask, where can all the ghouls and goblins out there find you on the internet?
Yeah, you can always find me at The Rocha Says on Twitter and on Instagram. And if you want to head on over to my channel, I'd appreciate you subscribing to my channel, my YouTube channel. I'm stepping down from hosting on SEN because I really want to focus on doing more content for the channel, maybe revisiting movies like this. This came out, August 15th, 1986. Was there a 25th anniversary coming up? I don't know. Is there a 35th anniversary coming up? I don't know. I don't do math that well, but those are the kind of things that we'll be doing on the channel more and more reactions, more reviews, more pre-produced content, more exploratory content, revisiting some great movies. So I'm taking a chance, I'm putting my nuts out there, seeing what happens, and I'm walking on the tightrope. But I know those are the things that make me happy. And so I want to see if it leads into positive stuff and bears fruit, and more people come aboard the Outlaw Nation train and join the outlet as we do more and more things and line up more and more projects for us to work on, for sure. So please come on over and hang out there. And of course, the Top 10 podcast, the Cinephiles podcast, the Geek Buddies podcast, and we just dropped our review for Loki with our guest Emma Fife, who is back with us for the rest of the run of Loki. So if you haven't watched that, please do yourself a favor. And that was a fun review to do with Emma. She's the best.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. If you aren't following what this man's doing, I can't recommend it enough. You're missing out. and you are, I would say, you're perpetually live. There is always something on your channel.
Thank you, man.
It's unreal sometimes. When I got a real sense and like a big picture of just how much it is you're doing, I was like, man, this guy's a freaking superhero. How's he pulling this off? So, yeah, I've been going since 9 a.m. this morning, bro. I was on Snyder's show from 9 to 10.
10 to 12 SEN, 12 to 3 top 10. I took an hour and a half to watch the movie, and now I'm here with you guys. And after this, I'm rolling in to hang out with my patrons from 6:30 to 8. So if that's another thing, if you're not a patron, please come be a patron. We do hangouts twice a week on the Discord verbally, and then on camera on Zoom for an hour and a half every time. And you can even help me study if you want for the Schmodown. So it's a lot of fun being there too. But I do it because I love to do it. I just love hanging out with people, man.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, we're so thankful to have some of your time, man. It's been great having you on. It's been an awesome episode, and once again, thank you for joining us. It's been a great one.
All right.
Before we wrap up, yeah, of course. Before we wrap up tonight, we are privileged enough to broadcast to people all over the place, no longer just in Northeast Ohio, like in our humble beginnings. But if you are in Northeast Ohio, real quick, you can still get your tickets to the Bob Ross Experience, taking place from 5 to 8 o'clock. $40 handling fee, includes appetizers, followed by a 2-hour class taught by a Bob Ross certified artist. Price also includes paint supplies, canvas, perhaps most importantly, a Bob Ross wig to rock throughout the event, held at the Winking Lizard Event Center. If you aren't local and would like to support, please feel free to donate at a specialwishcleveland.com. All donations go to the Special Wish Cleveland chapter, which benefits nonprofit. It's a nonprofit that grants wishes for children from birth up to 20 years of age with life-threatening illnesses. So a great cause. When you think about some of the things that we talked about tonight, no better way to take some of those thoughts and ideas and support a great cause there. And of course, next Thursday, we will be back for our last show of the month. We welcome our good friend Paige Farrell back on the 24th to talk about Sinister. That's going to be Sinister. It's a
scientifically scariest movie ever made.
That's what they say. It's what the studies say. Scariest movie of all time. So we'll put it to the test and see whether that's true. So come on back next Thursday live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch here on What Real Entertainment to talk about Sinister. Matt Thomas in the chat. Thank you for coming on, Goat Law. Yes, of course. Once again, thank you, sir. It's been an awesome show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll see you, Ghouls and Goblins, next Thursday. And as always, stay spooky, Brundle Ghouls. See you next time.
Stay spooky.